Welcome the anointed ones. Never judge a warrior by their glow. Some of the most radiant faces hide the most ruthless survival stories. Let's be real. Looking younger than your age is a blessing, until it becomes a battlefield. Studies show that people who appear significantly younger than their chronological age are often not taken seriously, overlooked for leadership, and even targeted, simply because others assume they're inexperienced, naive, or easy to manipulate. And if you're a chosen one, that glow isn't just skincare and green juice. It's divine preservation. It's spiritual surgery. It's grace with good lighting. But here's where it gets wild. Because you don't look like what you've been through, they assumed you haven't been through anything at all, so they tried to play you like a toddler, not realizing they just activated a seasoned spiritual assassin wrapped in youth. They looked at your baby face and thought, oh, we can run circles around this one. What they didn't know is you've already escaped fires they're still lighting for others. This episode, it's for the ones who've been misjudged, underestimated and prematurely disrespected just because your glow says 20-something while your spirit says, I've met God in the wilderness. What do you want? And don't worry, we'll throw in some laughs too, because if you've ever had a 50-year-old narcissist try to school you on life while you were quietly outmaneuvering their whole existence, you deserve to chuckle a little. So buckle up. By the end of this video, they'll wish they'd asked for your wisdom instead of underestimating your wrinkle count. Let's go. Number 1, they mistook youthful appearance for emotional naivete. They assumed you were emotionally soft because of how young you looked. That was their first mistake. They looked at your smooth skin, your bright eyes, and your calm presence and decided, this one must be naive, inexperienced, or easily swayed. They thought they could lie to you, talk circles around you, even manipulate you into second-guessing yourself. In their mind, you were someone they could mold, control, or keep in check. But what they didn't realize was that your youthful appearance wasn't a reflection of ignorance. It was the result of wisdom that had done its work. You didn't look young because you had an easy life. You looked young because you fought for your peace and healed through your storms. They couldn't see the inner battles you've already survived, the betrayals you've forgiven without apology, the spiritual warfare you endured when no one checked on you. They didn't know about the dark nights where you had to parent yourself, console yourself, and rebuild your own identity piece by piece. They couldn't imagine that someone who looked fresh had already buried versions of themselves that were destroyed by heartbreak, rejection, and loneliness. They had no clue that the reason you carried yourself with such quiet confidence is because you already knew who you were. You just didn't feel the need to prove it. So when they came at you with manipulation, you didn't fall for it. When they tried to test your limits, you passed their test without even breaking a sweat. You saw their tactics before they spoke. You noticed their energy before they opened their mouth. While they thought they were playing chess, you were already 10 moves ahead. Not because you were trying to win, but because you'd already played that game in real life, over and over again. They mistook softness for stupidity, but you let them. Because the best way to expose a person's true nature is to let them believe they're smarter than you. And now that the truth is out, they don't know how to process the fact that the easy target they thought they found was actually someone anointed, protected, and 10 times wiser than they could ever pretend to be. Number 2, you carry ancient energy in a fresh vessel. People were confused the moment they met you. You looked young, vibrant, and full of life, but your presence carried something ancient, something heavy with depth. They couldn't put their finger on it, but they felt it. They thought you were just another youthful face, someone who hadn't seen much, someone still learning how the world works. But the truth is, your soul had already walked through dimensions most people wouldn't survive in their dreams. You didn't carry the energy of someone new to the world. You carried the weight of someone who's seen it all before and came back with divine instructions. That's what they couldn't wrap their heads around. How could someone so young-looking speak with that kind of authority? How could someone with such a soft presence have eyes that looked like they'd seen generations of pain, victory, and spiritual truth? You weren't shaped by textbooks or trends. You were forged in the fire of divine encounters, supernatural downloads, and real-life battles that transformed you from the inside out. What they saw on the surface didn't match the power that moved through you. And because of that disconnect, they underestimated you. They spoke down to you thinking they were offering advice when really they were repeating ideas you'd already transcended years ago. They tried to teach you lessons you already learned in silence, without applause, in places where nobody came to rescue you. They thought they were smarter, more advanced, more capable. But every time you spoke, something in them got quiet. Not because you shouted, but because your truth struck a chord they weren't ready to face. You carry ancient energy. It's not something you learned, it's something you remembered. Something that came alive in you the more you stepped into your calling. You're not here to fit into timelines, you're here to disrupt them. You don't just operate from logic, you operate from revelation. And that's why people either get drawn to you or get exposed by you. The glow on your face is divine preservation, but the force behind your words is sacred memory. They thought you were new to this. They thought they could play you. But the moment they encountered your energy, they realized they were standing in the presence of something much older, much wiser, and far more dangerous than they could ever comprehend. Number 3, they expected timidity, but encountered a warrior in disguise. They expected you to be timid. They really thought you'd flinch, fold, or fall apart the moment they applied pressure. That's the game they always play. Seek out the one who looks soft, looks gentle, looks unbothered, and assume that means weakness. You looked calm, you looked young, you looked like someone who could be easily shaken. But what they didn't know was that underneath that calm was someone who had been through more war than they could imagine. They thought you'd be a pushover, but instead they ran into someone who had already learned how to stand alone, speak up when needed, and walk away without making noise. You weren't loud, but you were powerful. They mistook your silence for fear, not knowing it was discipline. They expected you to chase validation, but you didn't even flinch when they withheld it. They tried to provoke a reaction and were shocked when all they got was clarity and boundaries. That's when it hit them. You weren't the one to play with. You weren't reacting like the others. You weren't impressed by their titles, their fake confidence, or their passive-aggressive tactics. They had plans to manipulate you, and now they're stuck trying to figure out why nothing's working. The truth is, they were dealing with a warrior in disguise. You didn't come dressed for battle. You came dressed in grace, peace, and silence. But that didn't mean you weren't prepared. What they failed to realize is you had been trained through experiences, not appearances. You had already learned how to read energy, recognize patterns, and move wisely. You didn't need to yell to make an impact. You didn't need to fight to win. Your strength wasn't in your volume, it was in your restraint. And now they don't know how to respond to you. The ones who tried to control you are now avoiding you. The ones who underestimated you are now second-guessing themselves. The same people who thought you were soft are now realizing you're solid, sharp, and not here to entertain nonsense. You didn't raise your voice, but you raised the standard, and that's what shook them. They thought they were walking into a playground. What they found was someone who had already been to war and survived. Number 4, your radiance was misread as readiness for exploitation. They saw your glow and thought it meant you were open for the taking. That's how shallow their perception was. They assumed because you radiated peace, warmth, and kindness, that you were easy to use, easy to guilt, easy to manipulate. They thought your light meant you'd never say no. They saw your compassion and took it as a weakness. They didn't realize your energy was expensive, and just because you shine doesn't mean you're available to carry everybody's darkness. People like that always mistake generosity for permission. They take a kind word and assume you'll tolerate disrespect. They see you forgive quickly and think you'll tolerate anything. But what they didn't count on was that your light wasn't just a glow. It was a filter, a built-in system that reveals intentions. The moment they tried to pull too much, your spirit alerted you. That gut feeling kicked in. That inner knowing spoke up. You might have given people a chance, but once they started treating your radiance like a resource to drain instead of a gift to respect, everything in you shifted. What they completely missed is that your light wasn't free, it was earned. You didn't just wake up glowing, you went through hell, healed the wounds, and chose not to become bitter. Your softness is a choice. Your peace is a result of battle. Your joy is an act of rebellion against everything that tried to break you. So when people show up thinking they can latch onto you, pull from you, and leave you empty, you cut the cord. With grace, with silence, or with distance, but it gets cut nonetheless. They thought your light was a weakness, but it was a warning a sign that you are not to be played with, that divine beauty comes with divine boundaries. And the truth is, most people don't know what to do with someone like you, someone who's kind but not naive, giving but not gullible, radiant but not reachable to everyone. Now they're confused. Why isn't it working? Why did you pull back? Why can't they access you anymore? It's because they didn't come to honor your light. They came to exploit it. And now that the door is closed, they're stuck outside blaming your attitude, when really they just ran into your discernment. Number 5, they forgot. God preserves his anointed. They forgot who they were dealing with. They thought they were just looking at someone who had good genes or a skincare routine. They couldn't see that your glow wasn't coming from facials and vitamins. It was coming from divine preservation. God has been covering you, preserving you, protecting you. That youthfulness they keep commenting on is not just physical, it is spiritual. It is evidence that you were kept. Not because you didn't face stress, but because God made sure the stress didn't leave a mark. People think storms leave physical evidence, wrinkles, bitterness, coldness. But in your case, the storm passed through, and somehow you came out softer, lighter, and more radiant. That's not normal. That is not natural. That is supernatural. You did not escape the fire. You were hidden in it. God shielded your essence while life tried to tear you apart. That is why when they look at you, something doesn't add up. You have peace, but you've been through war. You're gentle, but you've survived betrayal. You're calm, but you've walked through chaos. They are just now realizing what it means to be anointed. It means divine interference, divine defense, divine delay. You don't carry yourself the way they expect because your entire walk has been under the guidance and protection of something bigger than you. And when they came to mess with you, thinking you were just another face, another light to dim, another person to manipulate, they did not realize they were stepping into a spiritual boundary line. This is where things shift. They are discovering that messing with you is not a personal matter, it's a spiritual violation. Because when God sets someone apart, you don't get to approach them any kind of way. There is favor on your life that protects you, even when you don't see it. There are angels guarding your steps when no one's watching. There are moments you were supposed to be broken, and somehow you weren't. They thought they were attacking you. But what they really did was challenge what God appointed, and now they're dealing with consequences they didn't expect. Not because you fought back, but because He did. Number 6, your appearance made them underestimate your history. They looked at your face and thought they had you all figured out. Too smooth, too calm, too unbothered. So they assumed you hadn't lived much, that you didn't know real pain, that you were inexperienced, untested, untouched by life's darker corners, but they couldn't have been more wrong, because behind that youthful appearance is a vault of experiences, lessons, heartbreaks, recoveries, and divine revelations that most people don't gain in a lifetime. You've been through battles so complex and quiet that even your closest ones have no idea what you survived, and yet here you are, glowing like you've never been touched by the fire. They thought you were naive, but they didn't know that you've already walked through manipulation so subtle it took years to fully decode. They didn't know you've already sat across tables smiling at people who betrayed you behind your back. They didn't know how many times you've had to rebuild your confidence after being torn down by people you trusted. They assumed your gentle presence meant you were inexperienced. What they missed is that your calm comes from having already survived the storm. You didn't get this way by luck. You earned every drop of wisdom, every ounce of peace, every piece of clarity you carry now. You weren't just born like this. You were built like this, in the dark, in the silence, when no one was clapping for you, when no one showed up, and when you had to be your own rescue. The smile they see is a miracle. The glow is a result of choosing not to let pain make you ugly. Your softness is layered with spiritual muscle. So now they're confused. They don't understand how someone who looks so fresh could be this solid, this wise, this grounded. But that's what happens when people judge only what the eyes can see. They're realizing that you are not just someone who reads about warfare, you've lived it. You're not just quoting healing. You've done the brutal work of walking through it. You're not new to this. You've been trained in silence, equipped in pain, and preserved by God. And no matter how young your face looks, your soul walks with the authority of someone who's already been through hell and came back crowned. Number 7, They confused soft features with a soft spine. They looked at your soft features and made a dangerous assumption, that you had no strength behind them. To them, gentleness meant weakness. Kindness meant inexperience. And because you didn't come off as aggressive or loud, they assumed you didn't know how to stand your ground. But they had no clue that your backbone was built from some of the hardest things a person can survive. You didn't just wake up with inner strength. You were forced to build it. They didn't know how many times you were betrayed and had to keep showing up like nothing happened. They didn't see the nights you cried yourself to sleep but still got up the next morning and handled your responsibilities. They didn't witness how many times people tried to break your spirit, and instead of snapping, you grew stronger in silence. Every smile on your face has been tested. Every boundary you set was born from being pushed too far too many times. You didn't get tough by yelling. You got tough by refusing to bow when everything in your world told you to give up. Your strength is hidden in your restraint. You don't fight every battle. You don't chase every insult. You don't retaliate every time someone disrespects you. And that's why they assumed you had no spine, because you didn't react the way they expected. But the truth is, your restraint was power. It took everything in you not to let this world turn you cold. It took serious strength not to mirror the hate that was thrown at you. That's not weakness, that's mastery. They thought you'd fold, bend, or be easily controlled, but now they're realizing you're made of something they can't manipulate. Resolve. You're not loud, but you're immovable. You're not mean, but you're not soft when it comes to your values. They can't understand how someone so calm, so nice, can be so firm when pushed. That's because your strength wasn't built in comfort. It was forged in fire. And now the same people who tried to overpower you are the ones trying to figure out how you keep standing so tall without ever needing to shout. Number 8, they came to dominate, but ended up exposed. They showed up thinking they had the upper hand. They believed they were smarter, more experienced, more in control. They came with strategies, manipulation, and mental games. They were ready to dominate, ready to twist your words, ready to pull you into a web of confusion where they would always have the power. But the moment they entered your space, something shifted. What they did not prepare for was your energy. It did not fight. It did not chase. It did not play the game. It simply revealed. The longer they stayed near you, the more their mask started to slip. Without you saying a single thing, their insecurities started to rise. Their guilt, their shame, their lies, all of it started coming to the surface. You did not have to expose them. Your presence did it for you. They thought you were someone they could mold and control, but you were a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. That is what shook them. They expected you to be confused. Instead, they found themselves unraveling in your silence. You did not attack. You observed. You let them talk. You let them show who they really were. And what they did not expect was how uncomfortable that would become, because your energy was clean and theirs was not. Your spirit was anchored and theirs was scattered. They walked in with pride and control, but by the time they realized what was happening, they were standing face to face with all the parts of themselves they were trying to hide. You looked like an easy win, someone they could trick, play, or emotionally corner. But you ended up being the very person who showed them how broken and shallow their tactics really were. And now they do not want to come near you, not because you hurt them, but because they cannot hide from themselves when they are around you. That is what makes you dangerous. You do not have to fight for truth. You carry it. You do not have to call out darkness. It reveals itself in your presence. You were never the one being tested. They were. And the outcome? You stayed grounded. They fell apart. You were not their prey. You were their lesson. Number 9, you looked like a toy, but moved like a tool of God. They approached you like you were a plaything, something to toy with, test, control, or entertain themselves with. They saw your light and assumed it meant softness. They saw your calm and assumed it meant cluelessness. In their mind, you were a puzzle they could solve, a game they could win, a person they could handle. But what they touched was not weak. What they mishandled was not ordinary. It was anointed, covered, set apart. And that mistake cost them more than they expected. They did not see it at first, because you do not show up with arrogance. You do not lead with your power. You let people assume. You give them space to reveal themselves. And that is what they did. They revealed their motives. They exposed their pride. They showed their true intentions. While they were trying to figure you out, they ended up walking into a spiritual trap they built for you. but set off themselves. You moved differently. You responded with grace when they expected rage. You stayed silent when they pushed for drama. You walked away when they tried to bait you into chaos. They were looking for emotional weakness, but all they found was divine restraint. That was their first clue that you were not who they thought. They thought they were dealing with someone easy to manipulate, but they ended up confronting a vessel that had been refined by God. That is the part that scares them now. Not just that they failed to play you, but that their attempt revealed them. People noticed. You did not have to expose them. Their own actions told the truth. Their credibility started to fall. People began to question them. Things started falling apart. And all of this happened not because you retaliated, but because God covers what He anoints. You were never the toy. You were the test. You were sent to expose hearts, shake hidden motives, and reveal the truth. And now that the dust has settled, they are realizing they were never in control. They thought they were playing a game. But they were standing on holy ground. And now they are dealing with the consequences of mistaking God's vessel for something disposable. Number 10, your grace disarmed them, but your wisdom dismantled them. At first they were drawn in by your grace. The way you moved, the way you carried yourself, the softness in your tone, it all felt safe, inviting and disarming. You didn't show up with ego, you didn't try to impress anyone, you didn't fight for attention. And that's exactly what pulled them in. They thought they had found someone gentle enough to influence, easy enough to control. They were so focused on your beauty that they didn't bother to prepare for your depth. They stayed close, thinking they had the upper hand. You weren't confrontational, you didn't raise your voice. You made space for people to speak. That made them comfortable, too comfortable. And just when they thought they could predict you, you opened your mouth and began to speak. Not casually, not for show, but with divine precision, with wisdom that didn't come from books or gossip or trend, but from God, from lived experience, from scars that had been healed, not hidden. The moment you spoke truth, something in them broke. They heard something they weren't ready to hear, not because it was cruel, but because it was clear. You weren't trying to prove anything, yet your words held weight. You weren't trying to correct anyone, yet your presence made their nonsense crumble. What they expected to control ended up confronting them, and what they thought was just a pretty face turned out to be a divine assignment in human form. They couldn't handle it. Some left quietly. Some tried to discredit you behind your back. Others just disappeared, not because you hurt them, but because you saw them. You spoke from a place they had no access to, a place of authority that couldn't be faked or duplicated. You weren't preaching. You were flowing, and they knew they couldn't match it. Now they avoid you, not because you did anything wrong, but because standing in your presence means facing everything in themselves that is still unhealed, dishonest, and small. You didn't come to destroy anyone, but your wisdom dismantled every illusion they had built about who you were and who they were. And now the silence around you is not rejection, it's reverence. They speak less because they finally know you were never someone to play with. Number 11, they judged your exterior, but got convicted by your essence. They saw your face, your smile, your calm energy, and thought you would be easy to handle, easy to charm, easy to impress. From the outside, everything about you seemed effortless. They assumed that meant you were light-hearted, maybe even shallow, someone they could shape to fit their own agenda. What they didn't realize was that your presence was not just beautiful, it was confrontational, spiritually. Your energy didn't just attract people, it exposed them. And that's what they never saw coming. They came close because they were drawn to what looked appealing. But the moment they stayed long enough, they began to feel uncomfortable in ways they couldn't explain. You didn't argue, you didn't raise your voice, you didn't accuse, and still something in them began to panic. Your peace started to disturb the parts of them they've spent years hiding. Your stillness began to shake loose the chaos they've never dealt with. What was calm to you became confrontation to them, not because of what you said, but because of who you are. They thought they could mold you, influence you, get you to fall in line with their patterns, but you didn't bend, you didn't shrink, you just kept showing up as yourself. And in doing that, you began to reveal how unstable they were, how unsure, how inconsistent. You didn't have to diagnose them. Your essence did that without words. Your discipline exposed their lack of control. Your self-respect exposed their performative confidence. Your clarity made their confusion unbearable. They judged the surface, but got hit with the truth, and it was too much. You were not just attractive, you were spiritually triggering. You didn't come to entertain. You came to awaken, and now every time they think of you, it's not your looks they remember. It's how they felt around you, convicted, uncomfortable, unprepared. You didn't play the role they wrote for you. You refused to be small just to make them feel big. And now they avoid your name, your presence, even your memory, because you weren't just a person in their life. You were the mirror they weren't ready to look into. Number 12. You're not just young-looking, you're time-proofed for your assignment. You don't just look young, you've been preserved, not by chance, not by genetics alone, but by divine design. While everyone else is racing against the clock, trying to reverse time or slow it down, you've been operating on a completely different schedule. God didn't just keep you looking youthful for compliments or vanity. He kept you that way because your assignment required it. Your appearance, your energy, your vitality, all of it has been timed with precision. You weren't meant to peak early. You weren't meant to burn out fast or get noticed before your character was rooted. That's why God delayed the visible signs of aging, not because you're better than anyone else, but because your mission needed you strong, sharp, and present at a very specific time. There are things you're walking into now that require clarity, stamina, and influence. And had you aged the way life tried to make you age, you wouldn't be able to carry it. So instead of letting the world wear you out, God covered you, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You've been time-proofed for purpose. There were seasons where you felt overlooked, invisible, like nothing was moving. But what you didn't know then was that God was preserving you, not punishing you. He was keeping you behind the scenes, shielding you from damage that would have aged your spirit and drained your fire. And now, as people start to recognize you, they're shocked. You look untouched. You look ready. You look powerful. But the truth is, you've been through hell. You just didn't let it leave a permanent mark. Your youthfulness is part of your strategy. It gives you access where others are ignored. It causes people to drop their guard, only to be stunned by your wisdom and depth. It gives you the ability to flow across spaces with both the young and the old without losing your authority. You're not a late bloomer, you're a divine arrival. And the schedule you're on, it's not set by society, it's set by heaven. So when people ask how you've stayed so vibrant, so focused, so ageless, let them know you didn't just age well. You aged on purpose, for purpose, by purpose. Number 13. They played with you because they didn't recognize you. They played with you because they could not see you clearly. You did not come with a spotlight. You did not demand attention. You blended in, not because you were average, but because you were assigned to move quietly. Your presence was youthful, approachable, even disarming, and that was the setup. They thought you were just another person passing through, someone harmless, someone unimportant. They judged by what they saw, not realizing they were standing in front of a divine test. You were not sent into their life by accident. You were placed, strategically, spiritually, and not to be worshipped or controlled, but to reveal the truth. Their reactions to you were never about you. They were about them. Every time they chose to lie, mock, manipulate, or dismiss you, they were making a decision that had spiritual weight, because in judging you, they were revealing their hearts. And now the consequences have started to show, not as punishment, but as reflection. What they gave out is coming back. They did not recognize what was right in front of them. You weren't loud, but you were appointed. You weren't flashy, but you were favored. You didn't come to argue or explain yourself. You came to observe, to hold space, and to see what people would do with the opportunity to engage with someone anointed, but disguised. And they failed. Not because they were ignorant, but because they were arrogant. They thought they could size you up, figure you out, and dismiss you like everyone else they underestimate. But now things are shifting. They are starting to realize who you were. The pieces don't add up anymore. The grace you walked in, the patience you showed, the way things seemed to work for you even after they tried to sabotage you. They are starting to feel the weight of their own decisions. That discomfort they feel, it's not random. It's judgment in motion, not by your hand, but by spiritual law. Because when someone is sent into your life as a test, how you treat them becomes your report card. And they fail to honor what they did not understand. They mocked what they should have protected. They played with what they should have respected. And now they are living in the consequences of touching what was never theirs to manipulate. Number 14, you aged in spirit, but God froze time on your face. You have lived through things that should have broken you. You have cried in silence, fought battles in private, and stood alone in seasons where no one showed up. You have been betrayed by people you loved, attacked for simply being who you are, and stretched beyond your limit more times than you can count. You've walked through emotional, mental, and spiritual storms that could have aged you beyond recognition. But when people look at you now, they cannot believe it. You still glow. You still move with grace. You still carry light in your eyes. And it confuses them because nothing about you looks like the pain you've endured. That is not skincare. That is not good lighting. That is not clean eating. That is God. He preserved you. While the storm tried to twist your mind and weigh down your body, God kept your essence protected. Every moment that should have left scars on your face ended up making you stronger in your spirit. You aged where it mattered most, in wisdom, in discernment, in spiritual depth. But your appearance, that stayed untouched because it was never meant to reflect your suffering. It was meant to reflect your preservation. You were being renewed the entire time. Every time you chose healing over hate, you took back years. Every time you forgave someone who did not deserve it, you unclenched your spirit. Every time you walked away, instead of clapping back, you protected your peace and your glow. You've been doing spiritual maintenance, and the results are now undeniable. People stare because you are a paradox. They sense depth, but they see youth. They hear wisdom, but they see softness, and they do not understand how both can exist in one person. They ask how you do it, how you stay so light, so radiant, so grounded. But the truth is, you didn't stay. You fought for it. You wrestled through darkness and came out carrying light. And now they are shocked, not just because you survived, but because you look untouched. They do not realize that your glow is the evidence of grace. God did not let the fire leave ash on your skin. He let it refine your spirit, and then he froze time on your face, so that the world would never forget that you are living proof of his protection. They thought your youthful appearance was an invitation to play you, but they didn't realize they were dealing with someone heaven kept hidden for such a time as this. What they mistook for innocence was seasoned wisdom wrapped in grace. What they saw as softness was strength forged in fire. They judged you by what their eyes could process, not knowing your spirit had already outlived battles their egos couldn't survive. You're not just young-looking. You're divinely preserved. Every wrinkle they expected to see was traded for revelation. Every breakdown they hoped for became a breakthrough. You didn't skip suffering. You just didn't let it disfigure your soul. You've aged where it matters, in integrity and insight, in divine authority. And now the same people who overlooked you are quietly watching from the sidelines, convicted, confused, and confronted by the light they tried to extinguish. Your glow is not decoration, it's a warning, a marker, a sign that God's hand is upon you. You are living, breathing proof that divine timing overrides human assumptions, that beauty can carry burden, that youthfulness can carry judgment, and that a baby face can house a battle-tested soul. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them speculate how you're still standing, still shining, still untouched. The truth is, you don't look like what you've survived because God didn't let you. They played with you because they didn't recognize you. But now they know. You weren't preserved for vanity. You were preserved for victory, and this is just the beginning. If this message hit your spirit, if it made you sit up and say, "This is speaking directly to me," then don't leave without showing love. Subscribe to the channel, not just to follow, but to stay aligned with truth, clarity, and real spiritual insight that the world won't give you. Like the video, if you felt seen, understood, or empowered by what you heard. Drop a comment below. Tell your story, share your thoughts, or just type, "I receive this," to anchor the word into your life. And share this with someone who's glowing through the pain, someone underestimated, someone divinely preserved, but publicly misunderstood. They need to hear this. You might be the vessel that helps someone else step into their power. Let's keep building this community of awakened, chosen souls who refuse to shrink. You're not alone here. Your family. Stay glowing, stay grounded, stay chosen. God bless you.